Now we would see displacement reaction. In displacement reaction, the element from one reactant replaces the element in another reactant. Now if you see here, that's reactant A and that is reactant B. When they react, you see those two elements? It gets displaced because of the other reactant. I'll show you an example. So in an experiment, we take iron with copper sulfate. So you see the blue color, that's copper sulfate solution. And that is the iron nail that you have dipped into the copper sulfate solution, and you wait for a certain time. You would notice that the blue color of the copper sulfate solution becomes transparent. Because of the displacement reaction. And the iron nail also changes color because of the displacement reaction. Now we'll see the equation for this reaction, that is iron or Fe. That's the copper sulfate solution. When you put iron nail in the copper sulfate solution, the AQ here stands for that the solution has water in it, you would get, so the sulfate which was earlier with copper combines with iron and it forms iron sulfate. So displacement reaction occurs. Now we'll see the double displacement reaction. So before it was only one element being replaced. Now we would have both the elements being displaced. That is the double displacement reaction. So element from the reactant A goes to reactant B and vice versa. Let me show you one example. So in this experiment, we have sodium sulfate and barium chloride. We take these two solutions and we mix. So what happens when we mix sodium sulfate and barium chloride? So earlier we had the sodium with sulfate and barium with the chloride. Both of these elements get exchanged. We have sodium chloride and we have barium sulfate. So this is the final thing that we get, where the sodium chloride, which is same as salt, remains in the solution, whereas the barium sulfate becomes insoluble in the solution and you can see it as the precipitate and you can remove it. Now we'll see how we can write the same in form of a chemical equation. This double displacement reaction. Na2SO4, that is sodium sulfate. BaCl2, that is barium chloride. those are the two reactants. What really happens is we get barium sulfate after the displacement and sodium chloride. So we have sodium sulfate and barium chloride reacting to form barium sulfate and sodium chloride. So like this, there are many different kinds of chemical reaction. Another type of chemical reaction is precipitation reaction. What is the meaning of precipitation? Something which is left after the reaction is over, a precipitate. I've already shown you one example of sodium sulfate and barium chloride. When this reaction occurs, when we mix these two solutions, we get the precipitate of barium sulfate, which is insoluble in the solution. That is what is precipitation. Formation of an insoluble salt. So the same displacement reaction is happening, but in the end, what we get is a precipitate which is not soluble